Hi there everybody, just wanted to make a quick video about the new Sony A77ii. As you can see here, I've got the A77 original and the A77ii. Now the reason why, of course, I got the A77ii is because I dropped my A77 in a lake, and lo and behold, weatherproof is not waterproof. So if anybody's looking for parts for an A77, this is now my paperweight. Now I've got the A77ii. I was able to use the same kit lens, so I replaced it with a new one. One thing I didn't like about the original A77 was that the autofocus tracking was just not very good, even though it has all the technology made for it with the SLT, etc. Now I got the new A77, and the autofocus features are enormous, and I'm having a really hard time actually figuring them out. So I thought I'd do a little video for all those other people out there who are, got this new camera with all these features, and it's, maybe not quite doing what they want. So maybe you can help me out, but I'm just gonna go through some options here and just show you what I've found so far. Now if I go to menu and I go into camera settings, number 7, you can see at the top center lock on AF is turned on. Now that's in the camera menu, that's not in the autofocus menu. So if I have that on, I'm going to go out of menu and I'm going to go to function, and I'm going to go to the autofocus settings. Now here you can actually see I've got these autofocus settings that start at the top. You can see, I'll go like that. Okay, so we've got, let's see if you can see that. Got wide, zone, center, flexible spot, expanded flexible spot. Now if you go to the bottom one here, I didn't notice this at first. It actually says lock on AF expanded flexible spot. But if you notice at the bottom here, there's a little arrow pointing to the side and a little icon showing your trigger button. So when you press the trigger button, it initiates. The arrow button to the side, if you go to the side, it gives you more options. So I went to the side, lock on AF flexible spot, lock on AF center, lock on AF zone, and lock on AF wide. And then goes back to lock on AF expanded flexible spot. So now these are available here because, okay, so I've got it on continuous focus here. I've got it on C. Now what happens is if I go to single shot, go to function, now you can see the lock on AF options are grayed out. Operation settings not available, focus mode AF shot, single shot AF. So turning the camera to single shot AF on the front disables those features in the autofocus menu. Now if you actually go to the camera menu, the center lock on AF is still on. So that will give you your center lock on AF. Now when I half press the trigger, locks on center, lock on center, then I turn the camera. It does not do any sort of object tracking or anything, it's just locked on. It's not even focusing now, it's just saying it's all green. Okay, so that's one thing. Then if we go to, I'm going to go to the menu again, the autofocus features. See, it's grayed out. That's the autofocus menu under function. Now I'm going to go to the menu and turn this off. Then go back to the function button. Okay, it's still grayed out. So I'm going to turn that back to continuous autofocus. Then go back to menu. Go out of menu. Sorry, go to the function button, the autofocus menu, and there it's enabled again. So there I have all those options again. Now if I go lock on AF expand to flexible spot, now you can see I half press the trigger and the thing becomes this schizophrenic autofocus machine that's just looking for something to focus on. Anything. It's all over the place. All 79 focus points are looking for something. So I'm just half holding the trigger right now. And it's just focusing everywhere. Now, what I noticed is if I go to the function button, go up to just expand flexible spot, not the lock on, then I go into the menu, and the center lock on AF, I turn that on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the center button on the joystick once. Now it's picked the object in the middle that I was, and now it actually locks onto it. I'm going to turn the camera and it's actually just doing object tracking. Now anytime I half press the trigger, it turns green and the focus tries to follow that object. Okay, it went out. I'm gonna move this camera out of the way here. Okay, but you can see I let go of the shutter button half pressed, and sorry, get my camera to focus here. Okay, so it's still tracking that object. I'm not half pressing the trigger at all now. It's got that thing in memory. So in order to take it off, I press the joystick button again, and it cancels it. So I'm gonna press it once to activate the feature. Then I pick what I want it to track, press it again, selects the object, then the camera's tracking it. Now it's tracking it beyond the autofocus points. It goes off screen, comes back on screen, it recognizes it. So it goes off screen, comes back on screen, recognizes it. Now I'm going to half press the trigger. Okay, it's focusing now on that spot. Now I'm going to move and it follows it. It's trying to follow it within the area of the focus points. Now it goes out of those focus points and then the focus is looking for something. When it comes back in view, I'm still half pressing the trigger. It recognizes it and tries to focus on it. Let go, and there it is. And press the joystick button again to deactivate. So I guess that's kind of the feature I was looking for, and I was looking for it under the function menu, under the focus areas, and I thought that this lock on AF expanded flexible spot was that feature, but it seems like it's not. What this gives you, the lock on AF, sorry, go back to menu. Okay, focus area. Okay, what this gives you is you can actually move your autofocus point around to wherever you want, and then when you press the trigger it's going to start at that spot. So it won't start in the middle, but it won't track anything either. So I'm gonna move that AF spot to the side, and then as soon as that square is over something I want to focus on, half press, and there it is. But then if I hold it, it is tracking it sort of. So it's almost doing the same thing as object tracking, except that you can start it from different points. It's still tracking. Let go. Move that back to the middle. Okay, so that's one thing. So I'm still playing around with that. It's interesting that this continuous versus single AF is really having an impact on what's available under the autofocus modes and what's not. The other thing I want to show that I found was really interesting is under the menu, I'm going to go to, sorry, first I'm going to show this. One of my favorite features on this camera, by default the camera is programmed on C. The custom button is programmed to have the focus limiter. So you can see at the bottom there's a focus limiter, so from 0 to infinity, and I can use the front scroll wheel to turn down the infinity, and then the back scroll wheel to turn up the 0. So that's my autofocus limiter within the camera, and it's really nice. I like it having it right on the custom button right there by default, and then I can turn it off. One thing that this camera has that the A77 also had, which I really don't like, is the limitations in the 12 FPS mode. So you've got that sorry, see if I can get this to focus. So you've got that 12 frames per second mode, and what happens is, even if you have an f2.8 lens, you can't go past f3.5. So if you've got like a 70-200 2.8 lens and you want to shoot high-speed sports and you want that 2.8, and I have one myself, I paid a lot of money for that 70-200 2.8 lens, I can't use that lens at 2.8. The camera stops it down to f3.5. Now of course digital camera by default, the aperture is wide open until you start shooting. So right now the lens is at 2.8, but as soon as I start pressing that trigger down, it's going to stop down to f3.5 and hold it there. Now what I've found with my experiments is that the exposure between shots varies quite a bit. I'm talking probably 2/3 of a stop plus or minus between shots, and it goes up and down. So I don't know if I can, I guess I don't have enough light here to do some shots, but I'll turn up my ISO. So if I do some shots here, and this is constant lighting, constant scene, it's recording to card. Because it's not very visible here. See, okay. So I did a series of shots. I didn't change any lighting, hardly move the camera at all. I've done this on the tripod as well. And what I'm getting is 1/80th, 1/60th, 60th. So that's not much variation there, but I've done other tests and it varies quite a bit. You can see other people's shots too, where they do a whole series of shots, and the exposure actually varies quite a bit between shots. So I don't know if the metering between shots, whether the camera's just going so fast with the shutter that it can't get a good meter reading between shots, and I don't know why it's shutting down to f3.5. It makes no sense to me. Like, I thought that autofocus sensors work better with more light, so you'd think they'd want as much light as possible so the autofocus tracks more reliably, but instead it stops down to f3.5, which is really, I don't know, I think an arbitrary limitation, which I hope Sony fixes. So Another thing I was going to mention is that I downloaded the Play Memories app because apparently this camera has the Wi-Fi control. Now, it's not at all what you think it is. I downloaded the app to my smartphone. You can remote view the viewfinder from the camera on your smartphone, and you can press the trigger, and that's about it. You can switch between video and stills and press the trigger and view what the camera views, and that's it. There's no settings by remote. Like, I wouldn't even call it a remote control. I'd call it a remote trigger or remote viewer. Anyway, I really hope Sony fixes that as well, because I mean, there's the other cameras that have come out before this have a lot more features and apps available than this does. Okay, so one more thing I wanted to show. Okay, obviously you might have noticed the hot shoe's been changed. So it's got that intelligent hot shoe now, where you can stick in, I guess, microphones and all kinds of stuff. But the nice thing is that my flashes work with high-speed sync wirelessly anyway, so I can just hold them and they'll work with the camera. I don't have to actually have them on the hot shoe, so it's not really a big deal to me. Okay, so one thing I found really cool is that if you go to the function menu, you'll see this navigation screen at the bottom. Now some of them are actually turned off and not available. Okay, that's because I'm in the 12 frames per second. What I'm going to go back to, yeah, this is also changed where you have to actually press the button to turn this. I find all the buttons on this camera a little bit stiffer than the other camera, but that's fine. Maybe it'll get worn in. So if you go to function button, you'll see all this stuff here available at the bottom. Now this will look different than yours from factory. That's because I've customized it, which I think is actually pretty handy. I didn't know you could customize the layout of these things at the bottom, and there's a lot more available that aren't visible by default, but you still only have 10 areas to fill if you want. So there were some icons on here that I already had up at the top, like ISO and exposure compensation and white balance and, you know, shutter mode. Now, I've gotten used to these buttons. I don't have to take my eye off the camera viewfinder, and I know these buttons from memory, and I can press them as I'm looking through the viewfinder and adjust these settings without taking my eye off the viewfinder, which is really nice. But these buttons were also on that function menu, which I think is kind of redundant. I'd rather have things on this menu that aren't on other parts of the camera already. So I changed them out. Sorry, I'm just looking at the camera, not at my screen here. So this one was here already, wireless flash, your metering zones, your autofocus zones, your quality is right here. Now I put this on this menu so I can quickly change it without having to go into the whole menu and doing this menu diving to change the quality. Sometimes I like to shoot RAW and sometimes I don't like to shoot RAW. So I've got it right here on the function menu. I press function, press it again, and I can switch it to JPEG and RAW right away or back to extra fine. So if you want to customize what is visible at the bottom here, you just have to look at the rows and columns. So you have 2 rows and 6 columns. So what I did is I wrote down the things that I wanted visible here that aren't up here or down here that are available to put here. So I went to menu and I went to so for instance, let's say you're doing a lot of videos and you want zebras. You can have the zebras available directly through that function menu without having to go menu diving. So I'm going to go here to the gear, and I'm going to go, so here's custom key settings where you can actually set where you want these what you want these custom buttons to do, which I've gotten used to, so I like them where they are. function menu set. So I'm going to press that. Now it's giving you function upper 1, upper 2, upper 3, upper 4, upper 5, upper 6. You go over 1, function lower 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can change these out. So right now, function upper 5, I have grid line. Select that, and it gives you all the settings that are available. So let's say I want that to be by zebras. Turn on to zebras, half press shutter button, function. Now I've got right there, row 1, column 5, zebras. So I can go in there and I've got it available, all my zebra settings, right through the function button without having to go through the menu. So that's kind of cool. So function, zebras, and I turn that off. There we go. It's just a little bit faster. Anyway. So that's about it. I'm still playing with the autofocus and everything. So far very happy with it. Haven't used face tracking or anything like that yet. So anyway, I hope that helps somebody. I appreciate all the videos I've seen online regarding these cameras. I haven't used the infrared autofocus assist that came on the A77, but I think for some people it would be nice to have it, you know, but this one has it. I guess it uses the flash when it needs autofocus assist. So they took it away here, which, you know, I never really used anyway, but they're saying that the new autofocus point in the center of this camera, there's actually a special f2.8 autofocus point in the center of this camera. I'm not sure if it's cross type or special type, which again, if you turn it to 12 frames per second, the camera automatically stops down to f3.5. You can't change it, so when you're shooting sports at 12 frames per second and you want that f2.8 center autofocus point is exactly when it's not available, because of course you're at f3.5. So if Sony sees this, or if somebody at Sony sees this, please enable larger apertures on the 12 frames per second mode. Like, what if I have a f1.4 lens? I got this, you know, Samyang. Of course it's not an autofocus lens, but some people may have autofocus lenses with larger apertures, f1.4. Like, why not be able to shoot 12 frames per second with full wide open aperture? It doesn't make sense to me. Maybe the shutter can't pass the object field of view fast enough at that speed. I don't know what the problem is, but anyway, that's my quick review after a couple weeks of having the new A77, and I hope I don't drop it in the lake. Talk to you later.